Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 118 of Buds and Blue Jays. This is your place for all things related to the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm your host, Jesse Burrell, joined as always by my co-host, Riley McConnell. And Riley, we are recording late at night here on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. I say beautiful as it rains and there's a storm outside, but that wasn't the biggest storm we had here in Toronto this weekend as the San Diego Padres came into town, a team that we don't get to see too often for the Toronto Blue Jays, came in here and took 2 out of 3 against our Toronto Blue Jays. Wasn't great to see. We'll get into all of that into the episode here. Plus, we're going to do some trade deadline stuff. We are less than 2 weeks away from the deadline. So, Riley, I know you and I have come up with 3 names each that we're going to talk about of who we really want to see the Blue Jays add to this team as they make a run for the playoffs this year. So much more to come in this episode. But first, Riley, what's up, man? How are you doing today?
Well, Jesse, I'm well. As I just said minutes before the episode started, I've been umpiring this year. I had the craziest game probably that I will ever umpire. I could have tossed both managers and at least 2 players. Like everything you could ever imagine in that game. I'm still honestly a little bit hyped from that. I'm a guy who doesn't forget a lot of things as far as what goes on the field. Try not to take a lot of it personally, but you never forget some things. And hey, well, there was an ejection in this series, and I'm starting to think like, hey, I let a lot of stuff slide, but not even in this game where Pete Walker got tossed for literally next to nothing. Like maybe I should be a little more stiff and less loosey goosey because I had a lot of profanity being slung my way and a lot of different things. So who knows, man? Either way, Jesse, we lost the series, but there's so much more to talk about, man. Let's dive right into this episode.
Riley, I think the fans want to know before we get going, what type of umpire would you be? Would you be like a Vic Carapazza or would you be like an Angel Hernandez? Like who's the Riley McConnell umpire comp?
Oh man, that's such a tough one, man. Umpires are so disliked and despised that
Sure.
like I would honestly, I really don't have one. I'm kind of just who I am. I don't know if I have the personality even for to make it as a big league umpire or to even have a comp. I'm too friendly, man. I'm too friendly with the players, and like if they were grading me, they'd say, Riley, you can't have conversations like that with the catcher. You can't do that. And it's like, well, hey, it's house league ball in the county. It's like, what else am I supposed to do? I'm spending 2 or 3 nights a week like that. Like, give me a break.
Well, I guess we'll have to keep you as a podcast host then because you have a lot of good opinions to put out on this series and in the trade deadline. But before we get into it, guys, this is episode 118. So as we've been doing with our episodes, we give you some random Blue Jays stats for that number. So 118 today, that was Kelly Gruber's, shout out to Riley's mom, favorite baseball player. That was her season high in RBIs was 118. And these next two kind of correlate well together, Riley. Number 118 was the number of starts that Marco Estrada made as a Toronto Blue Jay. It was also the number of games that BJ Ryan finished as a Toronto Blue Jay. So a nice little symmetry there. And number 118 in hitter war and pitcher war for the Toronto Blue Jays. Number 118 is a guy who actually hit a home run for the Cincinnati Reds today. That is Luke Maile. And number 118 in pitcher war is a guy named Jesse Carlson. So there are your Blue Jays facts with 118. Riley, got a takeaway before we move on to our game recaps.
I like how you say a guy named Jesse Carlson, like as if you don't remember Jesse Just Carlson. Hey, thanks, man. Yep. Get the Kelly Gruber shout out. That's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, BJ Ryan. I kind of got like a little bit of PTSD when you said that name there for a second. And how many games he finished? Well, how many of those were in the bottom half of an away game with a BSV, a blown save in those categories? Because those were yikes years for our bullpen.
Did have one big save year, though, BJ Ryan did, and he was better towards the back end of that deal. I remember that quite a bit. But let's enough about the past. Let's get to this current Toronto Blue Jays team, and let's get into the game recaps in case you missed them at home. Game 1 of this series was a dud. The Blue Jays lose this game 9-1, and the Alec Manoah comeback story took a bump in the road here as he struggled in this start. 3 innings pitched, 3 hits, 4 runs, 5 walks with 0 strikeouts. Didn't get any better from there, Riley, as Mitch White came in to do bulk relief work, and he also struggled. 3 earned runs in the back end of the game. But ultimately, it doesn't matter how you pitch if you only score 1 run on 6 hits, which is exactly what the Blue Jays did here. Going into game 2, the Blue Jays were looking for a bounce back performance, and they did not get it in this one either. They lost this game 2-0 to the Padres. Jose Barrios was quite solid in the start, though. 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 9 strikeouts. The game was scoreless until the 5th, until Manny Machado had a 2-run, 2-out bloop single, and that was all the offense they needed, as the Jays were shut out for the 5th time in their last 35 games after not being shut out at a single point this season until that point. Bo Bichette had 2 hits. Brandon Belt reached base twice in the losing effort. And in game 3, the game that happened this afternoon, the Blue Jays avoided a sweep. They were able to get a win as they win this game 4-0. Jays were able to add a single run in the second thanks to a Jordan Luplow single that was just recalled. And Jays stayed that way until the 7th when Vladimir Guerrero Jr. added an assurance home run, and Alejandro Kirk found his power stroke, hit a nice 2-run home run in this one to give the Blue Jays some insurance. Jordan Romano came back from his little injury there and pitched the last 3 outs, and Chris Bassett was the star in this one. 6 innings pitched, only 4 hits, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts to lower his ERA into the mid-3s for Chris Bassett, Riley. So after this series, losing against the San Diego Padres, the Blue Jays are now 5.5 games back, but not of the Tampa Bay Rays. They're actually 5.5 back of the Baltimore Orioles now, who have surged past the Rays to take the lead in the AL East. And we are tied with Houston in the second wildcard spot, both with 54 and 43 records, 3 games clear of the Boston Red Sox. So, Riley, a lot of takeaways, a lot of good performances. What do you want to talk about first in this series?
Well, actually, I don't want to talk about a good performance. I want to talk about a bad performance and something that it just drives me nuts, because it was way too soon to call him up, and he comes up, and has a great start. They were talking about the game beforehand. I think like he walked the first batter of the game. Alec Manoah, obviously, is who I'm talking about. They're going off and talking, he did so good his last start. He struck out 5, didn't walk a single batter, blah, 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 whatever. And yeah, didn't strike out a single batter in this one, and gave up a ton of walks, gave up a ton of hard contact. This was bound to happen, and I almost knew this was going to happen. It was one of those things, Jesse, where he went out and had a great start in his first start after being sent down essentially to the bottom, and got what I'm calling it's a rush job. He got rushed right back up, like, Alec is fixed. He's fixed. Bring him back up. Let him do his thing. Well, he did his thing in this one, and look where it got us, man. Like he's got to be on such a short leash. For me, there's little to no confidence right now, and I really want to see the usage go down a little bit. He was spent too long in that ball game, for starters. I mean, I get that we've seen Alec Manoah at his absolute best at times and has been just pure dominance, but that's not what we're getting right now. So we kind of need to take a step back with him. Like we need to win ball games. We lost the series against San Diego. Sure, we can look at it. We only scored 1 run. But the biggest concern out of this game was that for a guy who should be pitching at least in the high, I think he should have a 4 ERA right now. He should probably be a guy with close to, if not double-digit wins, and a walks and hits per 9, probably around, I'd say 1.3, and that's being a little bit on the,
and he's not
relaxed side. He's not even close, Jesse. So it was a bummer. It was a stinker. It was a letdown, man. So now it's like, where do we go after this? Because something's gotta happen. And I don't think he's going to get sent down again, but my wheels are spinning, and you just kind of hope and pray that he goes out in his next start and puts in a quality start. But Jesse, there's nothing for me to believe that right now.
Yeah, to me, the 5 walks were bad, and they probably, if you're just reading the line, look like the big thing to get there. And now there was maybe a bad call or 2 that might have gone against his way. But if you're pounding the zone, the umpire is going to call that a strike anyway. Alec Manoah wasn't doing that, so I don't want to blame the umpires, because we're an umpire-friendly show over here at Buds and Blue Jays. But my big takeaway wasn't that. It was the fact when Alec Manoah got to 2 strikes, he could not induce a third one. He could not get a swing and miss. He couldn't get a caught looking. Like, in that start against Detroit, and even in this one rehab start where he pitched in New Hampshire and struck out 10, a lot of those strikeouts were like the 2-seamer that started in and cut back over the plate. Like, a lot of them were looking. He doesn't have the swing and miss stuff. He doesn't have his slider. His slider is still not there. That got him to the 3rd place in the Cy Young Award voting season. Like, I really do not think that Alec Manoah is a major league pitcher right now. He's not. He is simply not good enough. And Riley, sit here looking for answers. It's like, what do we do? The Blue Jays obviously seem to think he's ready because he had to meet a bunch of set of requirements to get the call back up. Apparently he met those, and now he's getting the call back up, Riley. My question is, Hyun-Jin Ryu is set to return. He's got one more rehab assignment before he'll be ready to join the big leagues team. The Blue Jays really choices are go to a 6-man rotation, which means guys like Bassett and Gosman and Barrios don't start as often, or you just literally you wait till somebody gets injured, or you go to you just have to send Alek Manoah down. And I don't know, Riley, what do you think our best option is here?
I think get Mitch White out of there, and I think when Hyun-Jin Ryu comes back, there was a time when major league teams you'd have you'd say, oh, we got our 2 aces, we got our 3-4 guys, and then you got 1 or 2 guys that could be your starter or come along out of the pen. I like the idea of having a spot starter, and I like if one guy is scheduled for a start, you have the other guy available long out of the pen, and then switch every week. That's not a long-term solution, but it certainly lets maybe Alek Manoah throw lower leverage situations. Hey, and that's one of my pet peeves for a starting pitcher. And looking at baseball cards, look at Baseball Reference, I love to see, let's say, look at a career, 280 games, 280 starts. I love looking at that for starting pitchers. I don't see that happen. I put Manoah in a relief situation. I know that's not, ideal, but we need to see him in lower leverage situations just to build his confidence up or something, and see what Hyun-Jin Ryu's got. At least sample him in a big league game. And if he's effective, then we use him. If he's not, then he might not have a lot of time left. I mean, his clock has already been ticking. Injury or not, this is a big setback, but we can't really, I can't really speak on how I think he's going to do. Do I think he's going to be spectacular? Do I think he's going to be like his immaculate, like around 3 ERA season with us when he first got here? No. But hey, we're working with what we got. Later in the episode, we're going to maybe try and find solutions. But for now, I'm saying a spot starter. One of the guys start, one of the guys come along and switch.
Yeah, honestly, hey, it worked for Yusei Kikuchi putting him into the bullpen last year, and we saw signs of life. Now, Manoah and Kikuchi are very different pitchers, but it seemed to work, and Yusei Kikuchi has put together a better season. Maybe this is just what it takes to get some confidence going for Alek Manoah, and plus the Blue Jays can use him when they're down big, so the blow-ups, when they do happen, don't cost us games, and that is the most important thing right now, Riley. We got a lot to get through, so let's move some of these really quick. You did mention Pete Walker getting tossed, and there's probably more better storylines than Pete Walker getting tossed, but we can just touch a little bit here. But if I'm reading into the situation correctly, he came out to talk to Alek Manoah, and the umpire, honestly, is supposed to wait like 10 seconds before coming out. It seemed like the umpire just walked right away. He was fed up already or something. Maybe the Blue Jays bench was chirping him or whatever. But whatever Pete Walker said to Alek Manoah with his mouth closed, he knew the umpire was there, and he knew he wanted to get his word into the umpire getting kicked out there. So do you have a quick thought on that about tossing a pitching coach like that?
It's pretty shisty, in all honesty. Like, you just look, he shouldn't have been tossed in that kind of situation. Like, again, this goes where I feel like, I might let too much stuff go, where that's like hurt feelings stuff. Yeah. Like, I mean, if the umpire weighs 300 pounds and you say this fat sack of blah, 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 like, when you can take a shot at the uniform, don't take a shot at the individual. I doubt that he was saying that this guy smells bad and he has a terrible family and that. I bet you he's talking about the calls and this and that, talking about the uniform, not talking about him individually. And it's not even directed right at him. I think it's BS. Personally, again, I'm not there in the mound visit to listen to it word by word. But Jesse, my takeaway is that it's more like grow up a little bit. That's probably not the right call to make, but at the end of the day, did it affect the outcome of the game? Not really. It's just kind of childish.
Yeah, honestly. And that's usually what it is. The umpires get hurt or they want their TV time. That's usually how it goes. And I think that's what happened here in the Pete Walker case. Either way, he's back. He'll be there. He'll doing his thing from here on out. Riley, let's go to some positives, though. And I wanted to show some love to Chris Bassett, Riley. And he did it again here. It was 6 shutout innings. He took the team on his back when the Blue Jays really needed a win here, which was very good. In his last 10 home starts this season, Riley, 2.24 ERA, a 0.87 whip, 64 strikeouts in 64 innings pitch. Opponents are only hitting 167 against him. He's got 8 quality starts. I remember the last time Chris Bassett started, I read this list of starters that Chris Bassett had started against and beaten, where you can now add Blake Snell, who has been probably MLB's best pitcher in the last 6 weeks, to that list of someone he beat. His ERA went from 4.12 to 3.92 in this start. If it was 6 straight shutout innings, this is months of work has went into this, and many people behind the scenes. Oh, sorry. And not only that, not only is he pitching well, I also wanted to give some love what him and his wife did. They made a massive, sizable donation to Jays Care, and every win the Blue Jays get when Chris Bassett starts is another $10,000 donation to Jays Care. So, Chris Bassett, not only are you great on the field, you are using your time through the community and donating clubhouse. He's got the dog in him, Riley. That's all I can say. And thumbs up to you, Chris Bassett.
Hey, one smart lad, before he threw a single pitch in a Jays uniform, said he would do just fine. I recall that. And hey, a couple little shaky starts, but again, this is Chris Bassett doing Chris Bassett things. I couldn't be more happy, especially the situation we're in right now with starting pitching. We really need this guy to be on his game. He brought it in this one. And Jesse, if he was doing this, Jesse, when he was 24 years old, this is a guy who could really make bank. Sadly, he's had his best years past the age of 30. I mean, but Chris Bassett is a great. Hey, you know what? Whatever it takes, man, because he's got a good craft. He's a very, very tricky pitcher. And it shows in this one that, his pitch mix was great. The movement on his pitches was great. And of course, he was able to control, and even the ones, even the pitches he throws out of the zone, they're purpose pitches, right?
Yes, which is key.
They're by design, and it works for his game. And it's because if he hangs those breaking pitches over the middle of the plate, that's where Chris Bassett gets in trouble. Or if he locates his sinking and sliding stuff up in the zone, then he's going to get in trouble. In this one, great pitch calls, great pitch location. So yeah, thumbs up for Chris Bassett. Under 4 ERA on the year. I really hope it stays there, because 4 ERA is not bad, but anytime you're talking 3 ERA, you're talking about a pretty good pitcher.
Jose Barrios has also put his ERA into the mid 3s as well, which is wild, because at this point last year, he had an ERA around 5.4. It's amazing the turnaround Jose Barrios has done. He was good again in this start. 9 strikeouts was also great to see from him. We've talked about Barrios a lot. I don't have anything else to add on this start here. Otherwise, it was a good classic Jose Barrios start. Riley, the Blue Jays hit 2 home runs this series, and I want you to tell me which home run means more for the team or for the person or individual or for the Blue Jays going forward. First one, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. hit a home run today. It was opposite field. It was on a sinker down low in the zone. He put a good swing on it. That's his 5th home run now at home after having 0 for the longest time. He's now at 5 at Rogers Center. And then Alejandro Kirk hit his 4th home run of the season today. It was a 2-run shot off a big looping curveball that he got the barrel out in front of and pulled it into the Blue Jays bullpen there. Which of those home runs means more for the Toronto Blue Jays going forward?
It's honestly a toss-up, because those are really big home runs. I'll tell you, the one that caught my eye more was the Kirk home run. He sent it on an absolute rope out to left field. Man, Kirk's power basically gone this year, and it's just good to see him get a good swing off and drive it into the seats. As far as Vladdy's go, he should have way more home runs. He hit the ball hard. He squared it up right center field. And Vladdy has not overcomplicated things since the All-Star break, since the Derby, whatever you want to call it. He's on a really good trajectory. So I think honestly, he's doing the things right. So I think it means less for Vlad. But as far as the Kirk goes, man, he really hasn't had the power. He has supplied hardly any extra base hits this year. So for him to hit the home run there, it's not the biggest clutch situation, but it's still nice to see Alejandro Kirk get a good swing off and go yard. It's been way too long. I couldn't even tell you the last time he had a home run.
I think he hit one in the home opener, and I think that's been it, to be honest. At least home runs at homes. I know he's had 4 on the season, so he must have had some others in there. Kirk has kind of just turned into like a Jose Molina. really good at framing and being behind the plate, slow as shit. And then, but, also has a good contact ability just with no power. That's my running comp. Maybe we'll work on that a little later. Riley, I just have a few news and notes. I'm going to read through all of them here. And then if there's something that catches your mind, just stop me. We'll go through it because we still got a bit to get through in this episode. The first one is Jordan Luplow was selected to the Major League roster. He got a start in Game 3 against the left-hander Blake Snell. Nathan Lucas was optioned to AAA to make room. And then Adam Simber was designated to the 60-day IL. Adam Simber with an ERA over 7 this year. This might be ending his season, but it does clear up a spot on the 40-man roster, which we did talk about was getting crowded here. John Schneider has his 100th career victory as manager in this series. He ties Cito Gaston as the fastest in franchise history to reach the century mark. Jordan Romano was good to go. We saw him pitch a good, clean 9th inning in Game 3 of the series. Kevin Gausman will start Saturday in Seattle, giving him a little bit of a rest. Should be all systems go for the second half. Casey Lawrence, who we've seen pitch a little bit this year, opted out of his minor league contract. He is now a free agent, so our starting depth in Buffalo is taking another hit. And speaking of the Buffalo Bisons, a few more minor things here. Orelvis Martinez had his first series there since being called up. He hit a home run in his second at-bat with the team. And Addison Barger, Riley, seems to be picking up exactly where he left off. He actually made his first professional start in the outfield as well, which I find quite interesting. He had a home run, 102 off the bat. Riley, any of those major takeaways, any of things that catch your attention, just real quick?
I mean, the thing that sticks with me is I could have seen the Adam Simber thing coming. I mean, relief pitchers are funny, man. I would not be surprised. My thoughts on what's going to happen in his career: he will not be back with the Blue Jays. He will pitch for 2 more major league teams in 2 seasons with some AAA time in both, and probably hang it up after that. That just seems like the kind of path that Adam Simber's on. There was a time where he was a very good and effective relief pitcher. Like you said, all you have to say is ERA over 7, and we're at this point in the season, so you're not getting it down from there. It's really going to be a standout on his, pretty good career, Jesse. But he just doesn't have it. He just doesn't really have it anymore, man. So, too bad, so sad, I guess, but the good thing is, it does kind of free up a spot in a way. I know that we're lacking depth, but with the trade deadline so close, hey, there's a ton of options.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And let's get into that a little bit here. We buried the lead. It's trade deadline season. Everybody wants to know what the Toronto Blue Jays are going to do at the trade deadline. I do have some quotes because Ross Atkins was asked the same thing here as well. And here's what Ross Atkins said when he mocked about the trade deadline. He said, the Blue Jays are motivated to add. Pitching is on the radar. As with all contenders, Jays are eyeing relief pitcher and starting pitchers. Ross Atkins always has a knock of saying things without actually really saying things, like a lot of corporate jungo there. But this is what he said. He said a starter with options would be especially appealing. Of course, kind of what you said, right? Where they can put him into the minor leagues or they can call him up. Kind of what the Jays have done in the past by getting Ross Stripling and Robbie Ray at past trade deadlines, something like that. On paper, a left-handed reliever would be a fit, but I don't think it's a necessity, as I think the Blue Jays like that Trevor Richards and Eric Swanson are still very good at getting out left-handed batters. And the Jays are staying open for bats. We talked in our last episode how the Blue Jays could probably use a right-handed bat, particularly one in the outfield, particularly one that could hit lefties very well. We have a few names on this. Ross Atkins said he's open to that as well, but he's also open to adding left-handed bats too. A comment he's made in the past where he said it doesn't matter as long as they're a good hitter. Ross Atkins also suggested catchers, which I think we talked about a lot last episode, that they might get catchers. But Ross Atkins says they're not really on their radar. They believe in Alejandro Kirk still and Danny Jansen. So I guess we can maybe eliminate catchers off of our radar. So with that being said, Riley, that's what the general manager is looking for. You and I have both come up with 3 names that we think the Blue Jays could fit well on their team this year, Riley. I guess take it away first, Riley. Who do you think the Blue Jays should go after this year?
So I have actually more than 3 names, and I still haven't decided on who exactly I'm going to say, but I do know this. I said last week, I really like a Brent Rooker, and I really like a Jack Flaherty. So that's an outfield kind of type and a starting pitcher. So my first kind of idea, Jesse, I like the idea of acquiring an individual player, but wouldn't it be cool if we could go to one team and pick up 2 players?
Oh, you're thinking the big dog, aren't you?
No, here's what I'm thinking. What about a hometown return for a former pitcher and a former MVP outfielder?
Okay.
I'm thinking Stroman and Bellinger.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking. Price goes, I know it will probably be heavy, but I fully believe in what Marcus Stroman has done this year.
Mhm.
And I mean, Cody Bellinger, lefty bat, can supply some good power. I think it would be a really short-term thing. As far as what we would have to give up, we would probably have to give up someone like Barriera. And it's probably some more. My other thought too, with the way the Cubs go, I think I would be okay with either letting Biggio or Espinal go. I think Whit Merrifield is kind of out of the question. So if we're going to look at what we're going to get rid of, if we're looking at acquiring Stroman and acquiring Bellinger, what I would like to see happen is obviously if it's too lopsided in our favor, I'm not sure, but we can always scoop down some other prospects.
Sure.
But I'm going to say Barriera. I'm going to say maybe no, not a Relvis Martinez.
No, I don't think the
Barger's
Jays
out of the
went with him.
question. No, but we will probably end up in in that kind of trade, probably Espinal or Biggio. But that's my first kind of thing. It's two players, but that still counts as one for me. That still counts as one because I've done this, Jesse. I've looked at teams. I like the idea of maybe shopping at one stop and acquiring two.
There was a rumor going around too that the Blue Jays did have interest in reuniting with Marcus Stroman, which seems wild to me with how Marcus Stroman left this team the first time. Like, I remember he got traded the day Bo Bichette got called up. The Blue Jays, there were rumors, none of this is confirmed, but there were rumors that there was character concerns about Marcus Stroman, how they didn't want him around like a young Bo Bichette and a young Vladimir Guerrero, and it seemed like a pretty bad breakup at the time. So I'd be very surprised if that does end up happening. Plus, if it does, you're giving Stroman a spot in the rotation, and then Yusei Kikuchi is almost definitely a bullpen guy at that point. And I'm not certain how I feel about that either. Bellinger, I like. I see it. Bellinger plays good defense. The bat has come around. I've liked Bellinger a lot. I liked him in the offseason. I like that call. But Riley, I don't think the Blue Jays are going to go out and make a massive move. Like Shohei Ohtani is not coming here, for example. And I don't even think Marcus Stroman, who might be one of the best starting pitchers available on the market, I don't think he's coming here either. I think the Blue Jays are going to try to do something like they did under the Whit Merrifield deal last year, where they try to find a player who they like, who's under control for a little bit longer, and someone that the Blue Jays can really develop into their player systems. My only concern is, Riley, here that this is the last chance you have to acquire a player as well, because after this, there's no second trade deadline anymore. Like, if somebody gets hurt, you need to make a move now to get your depth. So my names I have here are kind of more depth pieces, but could to potential have some high impact. And my first name I want the Blue Jays to acquire here is Tommy Pham, who you might know, who's on the Mets right now. If the Mets go to sell, like they have, Mark Canha is another name too, but I like Tommy Pham a little better here. His StatCast page, Riley, is red everywhere. All over. His spray chart, Riley, is a good approach hitters to all field. He hits lefties exceptionally well. He's not the best defender guy, but he can take that Nathan Lucas, Jordan Luplow role on this team. And he's the guy, if he had to get thrust into everyday playing time, I think you're okay with that happening here. So Tommy Pham is on my list of guys I want to see the Blue Jays acquire.
Tommy Pham's got really good power. I know that for certain. Hey, I love me a Mark Canha too. It really, I would bet. I mean, it's still up in the air that if the Mets sell, but I would say that there's probably a pretty good chance. And I mean, Tommy Pham being a one-year player, a veteran player, probably a guy that goes to a contender. And we got to be buyers. Like, I'm a firm believer that we will be buyers at the deadline, whether it's a big splash or a little splash. Like, we're going to acquire someone. I feel like Tommy Pham would be a positive acquisition for sure.
All right, Riley, give me another name. Who's next on your list?
So again, goes with the packaging. Maybe take one or two. Look at that starting pitching. Going to Oakland, taking the last bit of what remains in Oakland. And I like me a Paul Blackburn, and I like me a James Caprillion. Blackburn is obviously my first. Blackburn is my first. If we could sneak James Caprillion in there, because this is another starting pitcher with options. I think he's got one or two left. And Paul Blackburn is another kind of Chris Bassett comp where he, doesn't have a ton of velocity, but he throws really good sinking and sliding stuff. And I think it would be a good complementary piece. Again, Jesse, and I wouldn't correct you on this, but Kikuchi doesn't necessarily get taken out of the rotation. The same in this situation with Paul Blackburn. But it would just be another steady piece to add that can eat innings. I feel a guy with lots of control. Paul Blackburn, a guy with great control, obviously. And I'm going to bring in, of course, I'm going to talk about my Oakland guys because it's a team I watch. It's a team I see. So, I mean, not a lot of other people kind of view it. Not a lot of people see it, but it's kind of like if you see how Chris Bassett deals, Blackburn's probably got less velocity, but still kind of the same, less loop on the curveball, but definitely a slider, two-seam sinker kind of combination. I think he'd be a pretty good fit. And again, he might even, I know Caprillion has options. Paul Blackburn may or may not.
Yeah, he does
whether
not.
that, yeah, still doesn't matter. We're looking at short-term, we're looking at short-term fix as well. Throw Brent Rooker in there too for what it's worth, man.
Sure. Blackburn is interesting because if you look at the surface numbers, he's got a 5.48 ERA, which looks terrible under the hood. And then you're like, why would the Blue Jays go acquire a guy like that? One, he's cheap, right? You can have him cheap. He eats innings, like you said. He's actually has some good stuff under the hood. Like his FIP is only 372, which would be the best of his career. He's already accumulated 0.8 WAR. The walks are a little high, but the strikeouts are the highest they've ever been. If he can find a way to induce more ground balls and maybe not so much as a hard contact, which maybe the Blue Jays can teach into him, I kind of like that call a little bit. But Riley, I'm going to go with another guy who I think the Blue Jays should go after, and that is a Michael Lorenzen from the Detroit Tigers. He is the type of guy that I think the Blue Jays could put into their back end of rotation. He's under team control for a while. Hell, he's an all-star, although he shouldn't have been an all-star, but Detroit needed a representative. But it is the type of the guy I think can come in, can give you quality innings. He can probably give you that 6 innings, 3 earned runs more frequently than not. And I do think, he's got good enough stuff. If you have to pitch him out of the bullpen, he's done that swing roll before with Cincinnati. So you don't have to guarantee him starts, right? But if you had to come in and start a big game, he could be that guy for you. Plus also, like, if you're in a pinch in a game late and you need an outfielder, Michael Lorenzen can play some outfield too. He's not a Shohei Ohtani-esque two-way player by any means, but he's got a little bit of that into him. So he might be my number one dream pitching target for the Blue Jays to acquire this deadline.
He's actually I like that a lot. He is a very fun two-way player in the fact that he's not a bad hitter. I bet you if he was a full-time player, he'd probably hit around 235 and maybe stream together 8 home runs.
Sure.
I think that I know he got some ABs playing for the Angels, but maybe not a deserved all-star like you said, but kind of goes with the same with Paul Blackburn. Just a guy who you kind of, I personally have confidence in him. You obviously have some confidence that Lorenzen can pitch, and that's kind of what it comes down to, man. Is you don't want pitchers over 4 innings even to give up 4 earned runs. You want some steadiness in there. You want some security. So having a guy who can throw the ball over the plate, not get teed up at 110 miles an hour every other pitch is important. And obviously we want a guy who can limit base runners too. I think that's important. Ideally, Jesse, the perfect pitcher, gets a strike every time, or if the other way would be he throws 9 pitches every 3 innings because he induces a weak ground ball or a pop-up. But that's just not how things work. And I feel like, Lorenzen's still kind of unproven in a lot of ways, but I would personally take the chance on him as well and see what he's got, because I'm sure as heck, man, I bet you Detroit and the whole American League, well, maybe not every team in the Central, but a lot of teams will be selling in the AL Central, and I think Lorenzen could be a possible moving target.
I think so too. Riley, one more name. Who you got?
Okay, my big one. I'll just say it out. We just faced him at his team, Josh Hader.
Wow.
I don't like saying this. I don't like saying this because it's a possible takeaway save opportunity from Jordan Romano. But if we're looking for one bullpen arm and a left-handed thrower We have Tim Meza, who has done fantastic this year. Jesse, you're looking at me with these wide eyes.
I'm dreaming, Riley. I'm dreaming of Hader in our bullpen.
Yeah, it would be great. It would be absolutely fantastic. I don't have no idea what we would have to give up. There's a good chance that the Padres could deal. Hader, actually surprising to me, has bounced around more than I thought. I thought he would have been a 20-year closer for the Brewers. Personally, if you were to ask me 2 years ago, but that's not the case. He could very much be a journeyman now, and probably one of the best journeymen. And he's probably one of the listen, as far as left-handed ninth inning guys, I don't think there's a better pitcher in baseball than
I'm
Josh Hader.
I'm with you.
And it just comes down to what we would have to give up. I mean, relief pitchers, if you're to look at, technically, we have the 8 position players and then relief starter. That puts us at 10. If you're to rank those 10, what's the most valuable to least? I would still put relief pitchers at the least valuable position.
Yeah, but in the playoffs, Riley, in the playoffs, release patterns matter more.
Yes, but then we talk about guys like Josh Hader, and those rankings go out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Those rankings really go out the window when we talk about those elite talents, and Josh Hader's one of them. I think if we got him, I think that would be a huge weight lifted. And hey, again, this is my third one. I could have gone a different ways. I'll give my honorable mentions at the end, but I thought I'd get Josh Hader in there because that'd be a big splash. That'd be a huge splash, and it would be fitting one of those needs.
I love it, Riley. If it could happen, we just saw him in Toronto. He was nasty. He got a couple saves in this series. He also, his hits per 9 innings is like 4, Riley, like 4 hits per 9 innings. Absolutely madness. I doubt the Padres would want to sell. They'd have to go on a pretty big losing streak here. The Blue Jays could have helped the cause by winning more games this series, but still, if they do happen, Riley, that would be a dream. I'd probably want him more than I'd want Shohei Ohtani or Marcus Stroman or any of the top names that are on the trade deadline available. Riley, I'm going to go to my last guy. My last guy might be a little bit unorthodox, and he's only played 5 games in the major leagues this year. But I really think somebody needs to save Jo Adell out of the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. And I really do think the Toronto Blue Jays could be the team to do it, Riley. He is a former top prospect. He is only 24 years of old. He is an exit velocity monster, Riley. He's already in the top 2% at hitting the baseball hard. The problem with Jo Adell has always been he hits the ball hard, yes, but sometimes he just doesn't hit it often. He misses a lot of pitches he should have hit in the zone. That is a problem. I will agree with that. That is why this guy is not in the big leagues consistently right now. But I look at a guy like Jo Adell, and I still see a superstar in there somewhere. And you want to talk about buying low on a guy who could be around for quite a bit, guy who's got great sprint speed, a guy who is always ranked in the minors. Sure, he could be one of these quad A guys, but I'm willing to bet that the Blue Jays could get him right now, and they can get him super cheap. Put him on the bench, even if it's just to be a pinch runner for the time being, even if it's a guy who could run into one every now and again. He's exactly the type of guy I want to make a bet on becoming a star at some point in his career. So sneaky pick, not the sexiest name, but Jo Adell is the one I've got.
It could very well be a sexy name, Jesse. I love me a power speed combination. I laugh a little bit though. Yeah, the contact, man. Ooh,
is bad. Yeah,
is bad. But the guy really mashes. He's an incredible athlete. I bet you he could have played. I don't know what position. This is a guy who could play professional football. I mean, the guy's an athlete. I would really like to think that poor Angels, players go there to die. If you were to ask me 3 years ago, I would have said that Jo Adell would be starting in an outfield spot for sure. No questions asked. But, there's hiccups. No one, even blue chips, even top prospects sometimes don't pan out. And if there was sometimes way,
a change of scenery needs, right?
If there's some way to resurrect, some really good potential, I mean, I would take that. Someone's got to replace Springer here. I'm not saying tomorrow, but somewhere down the line, George Springer will need to be replaced. It's not a bad idea. Power speed guy, right fielder.
Still incredibly young.
That sounds good. Still incredibly young. Even Kiermaier too. He's probably not going to be here for very long. So someone, we got a power speed guy in the corner, and who can play center, and Varsho, and then another power speed guy. That's an easy one to figure out. We basically, to fill out the rest of the outfield in the future. We look for a good bat on ball guy, and we still have a perfect outfield again 2 years from now when we already have a perfect defensive outfield, in my opinion. But yeah, sneaky. Forgot about Joe Adell there for a hot minute, but I'm glad you brought his name back into the story because, yeah, he is a great ball player who just hasn't figured out his game yet.
Riley, we were running out of time here, so you want to give some honorable mentions. Don't even dive into detail. Just give me three names as their honorable mentions.
Sonny Gray, German Marquez, Brian Reynolds. End of story.
Love that. I was thinking the Pirates team as well. I like Andrew McCutchen if we could get him. And I also like some former Blue Jays. Both would be rentals. One would be Teoscar Hernandez, who is a free agent. It would be wild if we get him back here to be that plays on the bench. And the other one is Randall Grichuk. And like, look, you're already paying him anyway. So you might as well just get him back here and get him in here to see he could run off to one. We know he's a gamer. We know he's good. So those are my three names as well. Riley, anything else you want to add before we get off here tonight?
I really hope Jesse, I'm more realistically, it probably will be a little splash. I hope it's the right piece. Hey, a guy can dream on a double, a move to the Cubs with a Bellinger and a Stroman, or a big move with like a Josh Hader to come out in the back end of your bullpen. But hey, man, it's not up to us. We can talk, we can speculate, but hopefully moves are made.
Yep, we're going to come back after the series against Seattle. It'll be good to see the Blue Jays in Seattle. Always one of the best trips to see the Blue Jays fans invade that place. I'm excited to see that there. We are going to come back with some more names, more than likely, as things develop in this series. Until then, guys, we'll see you next week. That'll do it for episode here today. Follow us Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. Riley, thank you for staying up late for recording with me here tonight, and appreciate the effort for the Buds and Blue Jays podcast here.
We do what we can, Jesse. We do what we can. It was already forgot about the Padres series. We got to move past that and hopefully make a splash here in the next week.
All right, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks again. Let's go Blue Jays.
Thanks, guys.